Hello everybody, welcome to Micaela Makes. I am starting to work on the quilt coat. I'm not sure if you saw that video, but I found a quilt in a thrift store in Denver not too long ago, brought it home, washed it up, and I'm going to make a quilt coat out of it in a size medium and give that away to somebody on this channel who subscribes and makes a comment on that video. The intro that you just saw was also the intro for a video I did on how to put a pattern together after printing on your home computer and printer. So this is the correct video for anybody who subscribes and likes and leaves a comment down below. You'll be eligible to win this size medium quilt coat. I am actually taking quite a bit of time to get familiar with the quilt itself and the pattern pieces I have to work with. Now, I have made this pattern before, so I'm familiar with how this comes together, but what I'm really looking at is how to make this quilt with the best use of all the work that went into this quilt to begin with, right? So initially I really thought I was going to use that center rectangle as maybe the full back of the quilt, and then I started kind of talking myself out of that, and then I thought I would use some of the I think that inner border, yeah, here I go, the inner border. And there was nothing I was really settling on until I ended up kind of turning the whole thing on its side and thinking through how I could use that inner white border with the hand applique. Now remember, this quilt, this is a big quilt. Now this is, I would say it's easily a queen. And it is entirely hand embroidered and hand quilted in a 1-inch grid. So I'm thinking about that, as well as I'm getting exasperated with myself. Yeah, I'm just trying to think through how to do this. So it does take a bit of time, if you're doing this with an existing quilt, to lay out these pieces and really understand the quilt itself and how you can get multiple pieces to work and play together after cutting this thing apart. So ultimately, I am landing on using the white. Yeah, here's where I just, this is where I start to think, I'm going to use this white strip, aren't I? And you know what that means? That means I'm going to have to match it up, right? I'm going to need to match it up across the front and ultimately across the back. And why I'm landing on this and not using the center rectangle right now is I want to use those flying geese in that center rectangle down the arms, the outer arms of this quilt coat. So I'm now convinced I'm using this white strip, and I've just made this a lot harder, but I think it's going to end up looking better. I don't know. Yeah, but that's where I'm at with this. So I've convinced myself that's what I'm going to be doing. I really would have liked to have gotten a mirror image of the arms, but in order to get that flying geese detail to both have both arms going the same direction, I had to cut it twice the same way. I hope that makes sense. When you see the final one, I think it'll make sense. Here, I'm just unsewing a bunch of fabric so I can use it for the binding. Collar. I don't know why I chose to do the artist cut, but I did. I just thought this would be cool to carry all that handwork. I don't know. I kind of went a couple different ways on this. Initially, I was going to use the center. It's not a medallion. I mean, it's in the round sense. The center square from the quilt. I was going to use that as the back, and you'll see me marinating on this. I literally am on the quilt studying it, trying to figure out how to cut this quilt apart and make the most use of, that's not the right word, how to respect the work that went into it. That's what I want to say. Because this is all hand quilted, and whoever made this, I don't want to say she because I don't know who made it. They did a beautiful job on, I mean, nearly perfect grid. I can tell you the stitches are very consistent. I know because I unsewed quite a bit to get, I'm trying to get strips of what we would call binding on a traditional, on a quilt, but I'm going to be using it to encase the seams, right? So right now, if I sew these together, obviously these don't go together, but if I sew these together, you can see, right? We're going to have a pretty thick thing here. So what I'm doing is I'll be folding this in a bias tape fashion so I can encase the seams like this so you don't see this. I hope that makes sense. Guys, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I made myself one. That's how much I know. That's it. But I learned a bit on that one. So I'm also not really going to, I mean, I'm going to press this, but I'm not going to press the love out of it. Look at all that. I'm going to leave that love in there. I'm just going to press it so I can make bias tape. And what that means is I'm going to fold the two edges in towards the center. That'll be my bias tape, even though it's not cut on the bias. Well, it could be. How do I know? I don't know. But that's how I'll use it, so I can clean up any of the edges. The front, let me see, sorry, front panel, right? This will be edged with it. Now on mine, okay, here's mine. On mine, this was the back for mine, and you can see how I encased my seams there. I used it to edge everything, the pocket edge. So that's in the bottom edge. So that's what I'm using it for, right? Just to kind of clean up all those edges, the collar, right? This, my quilt, this one, much older. Look at that wore through spot. This was much older. I would say, I mean, I think this was from this quilt was probably made in the 50s. That's my best guess. It does have a quilt pattern on it, you know, it was machine quilted, but this was so hard to unsew, to get these edges. Golly, I mean, took me forever. This one, bless whoever made it, the hand quilting, fairly easy to unsew once you start one edge, you know. This is a long, it would have been quilted in a very long row, so unsewing was fairly straightforward. But now I've got my pieces. I unsewed some bigger strips. I just need to cut my strips. I'm cutting it at 2.5, and I say that now, but looking at the thickness, now mine was much thinner, really worn. There were spots that really didn't even have quilting in it anymore. So I'm looking at the thickness now of this, and I may need to go to 3-inch strips for the binding. I'm not sure. I'm gonna iron this up and take a look. Well, I think it'll go. I think it'll be fine. I always over worry. I don't know why I do that, but I do. Anyway, I'm kind of tickled. This is a bit harder than I wanted. I'll probably see this little tiny piece, you know. I'll probably have to sacrifice him. Sorry, friend. But I'm leaving the applique. It's cool, right? I hope I made the right call on this, guys. I think it's kind of cool. It doesn't quite, you know, the stem, you know, doesn't really line up. I tried to make sure I had 3 dots. They're not the same, obviously. We'll see. I really would like to know what you guys think. I think I'm going to post what I've done so far. I think I'm going to go ahead and post that because I do need a little bit of help on the pockets. I'm considering doing the pockets inside, and here's why. This is where I need help. The way the short coat pockets, the way the pockets are designed, they would go over the majority of this right here. Just is it easier? Yeah, it would go right here and cover the embroidery. Now I know we need pockets because we always have keys and our cell phone and whatnot. But what do you think if I put them on the inside? And then it could be kind of a cool flash of another piece of the quilt. You know, it could be, the pockets could be another component of the quilt that we don't see out here. I don't know. I need your help on this. And this is my SOS. Please let me know what you think. If the inside, putting the pockets on the inside would be okay, or let me show you mine again. I'll put mine on. I love mine. It's like wearing my great-grandmother in a weird way. That sounded weird, did it? Okay, that's not what I meant. It's like being wrapped in my great-grandmother's love. That's what I mean. Okay. Do you see how they take up? This is the pattern. Could I make a smaller pocket? Yeah. But it's the whole point is they're kind of big because you can put stuff in them. And then I do think I did this almost clown-like on purpose. The button on mine is a bit large, to be honest. I don't really button it, but I'll stand up and show you. So, I mean, it's a little bit big, but I really wanted this to to show more on the front. So I did make them a little bit big. I think I'm going to make these buttons maybe a size smaller. Doesn't, you know, because look, I mean, it would be great if I could repurpose these as the button. Also a question. So I'm looking for some feedback is what I'm saying. All this to say is I need a little help on this, guys. This one was very easy for me. I studied this and it is pretty straightforward. It's a, you know, 9 patches. Easy, you can get your head around it pretty easily. This was much different and had a lot of handwork. So I'm hoping I'm doing the right thing. I'd love some feedback. Let me know what you guys think. But for now, I'm gonna start making this while I'm getting feedback from you guys. I'm gonna start making it. I'll deal with the pockets and the buttons when I get there. So yeah, thanks guys. Any help? Things I am doing to get ready here to sew this quilt coat together. I am switching out my needle to a jeans needle. Just because this is fairly thick, and typically we would use a jeans needle on, besides jeans, maybe a jelly roll quilt, something like that. So I'm going to change out my needle to a jeans needle. I'm going to change out my foot to my walking foot, and I'm going to use, instead of 50 weight cotton thread, which is what I typically use, I'm changing it to 40 weight, which is just slightly sturdier. That's kind of it. So the green, this is Aurifil. I use Aurifil threads, and normally use the 50, but I'm going to use the 40 for this, just to have it a little bit stronger since it's a wearable. And then I'm going to get started on this. The coat comes together actually pretty quickly. It's not that difficult to do. It's more about, you know, the finishing the edges with that bias tape that I'm creating. So I think the majority of the work on this for me is deciding how to respect the work that has already gone into making the quilt, but also making it into something beautiful to wear. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Sorry about the lighting. I've got my camera light on and it's obviously reflects into my glasses, but I don't know if you guys know this, but on thread, you know, you can define the end. You just pop the bottom off. Keep right going. I'm gonna need to. I need to wind a new bobbin. So I'm gonna wind my bobbin. I've changed out to 40 weight jeans needle, walking foot, and then I can get sewing on this. So you guys will be watching me, but I will be quiet. I'm just prepping a needle, and if you're new to sewing, the easiest way to put a knot at the end, just lay the end of the thread long ways along the needle and hold it down, wind it 3 times, pinch it, it's kind of hard to see, and then slide it down, and you'll have a nice little knot at the end. And the reason I'm doing that is after I've got the bad habit binding tape down on one side, I'm going to hand stitch it down to the other side, and I'm also going to cut after I did this, it's still too thick. So I'm gonna trim this side down too and hand sew it. So that is why I've got the needle prepped. I'm gonna do this other side. And sew them down. Right, so where I'm at is I've got the front panel, sewn to the back, and I've encased that seam. This is the trim, and of course these, you know, I'll trim these off, but this where the sleeves will attach in a bit. But then my next step happens to be the collar, and even though these fabrics look alike, they're definitely from the same line. They are a little bit different, and so I'm choosing this to be the inside for the collar and this to be the outside. And you could tell that this rose is got yellow on it. It's pretty cool. Intentionally yellow, it's not from age. But now I need to trim. I need to add the binding to the collar. So that's the step I'm on right now. All right, I have the edge put on the collar. So I just went around with the machine and then did the hand sewing. Just hand stitched it down. And I thought these were too different. They're not. It's just a different part of the pattern. So, but I do like these bigger flowers for the outside of the collar. So now it's going to be put on the body of the coat. That's my next step. All right, I've got my collar stitched down, or sorry, pinned together with the body of the coat, and I'm just going to stitch it down as the next step. I've got the collar sewn on. You can see how thick that is. I'm going to encase this seam, of course, but before I do anything, I'm going to separate these layers and cut out some of that batting just to get it a little bit less thick. So it's going to be a little fiddly, but I need to get that thinned down a little. That's what I'll be doing next. That's how much I got out of the seam. I don't know if it's worth it, but we'll see. All right, this is as far as I've gotten today. Collar is on, looks good. Trimmed out. These are loose for right now, they'll get trimmed off. And next will be the sleeves, though I'm not going to do that today. So it's looking okay. It's coming together nice. I was super worried about this stuff not lining up, but it's worked out. So the maker's math was good to begin with. All right, that's a break for today. I need to go get some hand sewing done. All right, more progress on this coat. Let's see where we're at. So got it ready. Let's see, this is looking good. Collar's on. I need to cut some of this stuff off. What I spent some time doing is, before I sew anymore, like here's a side seam, I went ahead and cut back the the wadding, the batting, so that when I sew these things together, it's not so thick. And so if you're going to make a quilt coat, take that into consideration. I wish I would have done that before I started. I could have just gone around everything, and I just cut out like a 1/4 inch of batting, but it makes the seam so much less bulky. And what I would take into account is the quilt coat I made myself was so old. There were spots in it that didn't even have batting at all. You could see right through almost. So it was very, very thin. This one being newer and fairly thick, I'd suggest cutting away at least a 1/4 inch along the seams. Pocket. Okay. I had some good suggestions, and that led me down a little bit of a rat hole. You know how we get. I squirreled for a moment, but what I think I've landed on, I say that because until I sew it, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a side seam pocket. So I'm just going to put a pocket, before I sew this together, I'm going to put a pocket in here, so it won't take away from the front panel. And I found this lavender. You can see it's got a sheen to it, and it seemed to match really nicely with. So that's what I'm going to make the pockets out of. Got a little pocket online, so that's what I'm going to do. We'll see how it goes. Right now, my next step is to sew up the side seams. So I'll be doing that. You'll see that. And then I'll attach the arms. And again, each one of these seams will be encased by the fabric that I unsewed, right? So yeah, that's where I'm at. I just wanted to give you a quick update, pause for a minute from all the sewing, and kind of show you where I'm at. So I'll just keep on going and see where this takes us. Starting the final piece of this quilt coat, which is the buttons, So the buttons I'm making from the fabric, and I tested out a couple different ideas, but what I ended up with was 3 different flowers. There's one. 3 different flowers from the quilt fabric is what I end up using. Doing a few buttonholes here, and we're almost done. The quilt coat is done. What do you think? I think it turned out really cool. I did the fabric buttons. There's 3 different flowers that were on it. Yeah, turned out cool. The pockets, So I had some help from a comment that got me down a rabbit hole that worked out really well. So I did side pockets in the seam and I lined them with a kind of a matching purple. So yeah, we'll see who the lucky winner is going to be. Size medium. I'm a small, so you can kind of see. So it's got some room in it for me, but it definitely would be, I think it's a little bit too roomy for a small. It's definitely a medium. It is not a large. I really hope you liked this video. If you're still with me, please be sure to subscribe and like and leave a comment down below if you would like to be eligible to win this quilt coat. Thanks everyone.